There we go. Welcome, everyone, to our weekly meeting, and love to see all of you again. And hope you had a nice and wonderful Tuesday off last Tuesday, as we um, were able to all take a little breath, and then we're reconvening now today. So looking forward to getting you guys all updated on what you might have missed in our last weekly update. So what we have here, and I don't know how people feel about this. I'm assuming you all have the agenda or access to it. I liked last time we met being able to see you much more vividly on the camera shares, and so I'm not going to put up the agenda if that's okay with everyone. Does that work? I see a few nods and a few people who are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't care. So that's all good. We'll go with that for now, and then if we have other things to project up, we can do that. But the agenda doesn't need to be there, clogging up our ability to see each other. So we'll try it. So we will jump right in. I see that Chris was able to access the link that I sent. So welcome, Chris. I think I put you directly at the top of the agenda here, just so you could get in and get on to other meetings if you needed to. But we just wanted to have a moment for all our partners here to hear where we were with our cost of quality study and the survey that's coming up. And so I'll turn it over to you, Chris, and let me know if you need the screen or anything we can project.
I think I'm good. I'll just give a quick update. So for those of you who weren't here on the last meeting, the cost of quality study is an attempt to gather data on the true cost of providing high quality early childhood education in Oregon. We will still be doing the market rate study, but this is in addition to the market rate study to collect data on really what the true cost of quality about actual expenses to better understand what it takes to provide high quality child care. And it's going to be used to inform how the state sets the employment related daycare childcare subsidy rate, and to understand the current and future investments needed to support early childhood systems in Oregon. And a key component of this cost of quality study is participation from childcare providers. And the first step in getting that data and information is a survey that we'll be sending out. And so we are still finalizing the translations of the survey into the 5 languages, English, Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, and Chinese right now. But the live link will be ready next week. We do have 1-pagers for all of the CCRRs to do some outreach to childcare providers, and John included those in the attachment. So if you're able to reach out in newsletters or even a separate email to tell providers that this is coming, that would be great. The second phase of data collection will be through in-depth interviews with providers to get a real sense of what their operating costs are pre-COVID, just so that we can get a baseline of what costs are. We know that costs have obviously been impacted by COVID times, but this really is going to be pre-COVID, just to get us on the baseline to determine what those costs are moving forward. And we're actually contracting with a research agency, Center for American Progress. So Simon Workman and Gina Caputo, those will be the two researchers that will be reaching out to providers. So if you're able to send this out in a newsletter or even a separate email out to providers, that would be great. Again, we'll follow up with a live link next week if it's more beneficial to send out the 1-pagers and the live links together, but we really appreciate just this time to talk to you more about what this cost of quality study is and the real impact that it can have for providers in Oregon and rate setting moving forward. And then just any questions that folks have.
All right, anyone have questions, comments? Not seeing any hands raised, and I seem to have lost the chat box, which oh no, here it is. I got it. Nothing in the chat box. That's good.
Well, thanks for all your time today, and I will be back in touch with John so he can send out the live link next week.
Hey, Chris. I did see one hand raised as you were signing off. We like to do that. It's like Columbo, you know, like, oh wait, just one more thing. And there's several people in this room who don't even know who Columbo is, but that's okay. Go ahead, Christine.
I know who Columbo is. Anyway, it's a really fast question. I guess my question is, will this potentially have impact on like the preschool promise and or baby promise rates as we move forward? Will that go into deciding those factors in the future?
It might be a consideration for policy-wise. Baby promise right now is funded through CCDF, so it could have an impact on those rates and just the conversation in general of what the true cost of providing quality care is. So it will be utilized in that way. But I can't tell you exactly how until we get the cost model and we do start using it.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Christine. Any others out there have thoughts or other needs related to the survey? So yeah, if everybody can utilize that one pager in the short term, then the links will come live very soon. And Chris, really appreciate having you come in for a quick recap of where we're at with that, because this is hugely important work for Oregon. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's see. So the next item that we have on our agenda is just ensuring that, we know you guys get quite a bit of information in your inboxes, and some good information, some information is time sensitive, but we also know that you're getting correspondence from all over the place, and we want you to believe that our correspondence is the very most important correspondence that you receive, but we also want to point you in the direction of a few of them just to make sure that you have all that you need in order to understand where we're headed and what's going on. And so this next one I'm going to turn over to Joan, but relates to some correspondence about a few different things that the governor prioritized. So Joan, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's really great to see everybody today. We just wanted to make sure that everyone saw the, I think, really important news that the governor line item vetoed the GF cuts that were proposed to focus childcare networks, the early learning hubs, and also Healthy Families Oregon. In her press release about the finalization of the budget, she really talked about how important these resources and supports are during this time in our state, and of course to help assist with response during the pandemic and recovery from the fires. So I hope you all take that to heart, that this was a big lift to get this to happen, to be able to preserve this GF for this work, given the state's financial situation, I think is a real vote of confidence in you as leaders and in your organizations and the importance of the work that you do. And I think reflects the support that is really there from the governor's office and from Miriam and our Early Learning Council. And of course, many advocates and maybe some of you who talked to your legislators or others to let them know how important these resources are for childcare providers. So the budget is now considered final. Of course, there's a tremendous amount of work going on right now, getting ready for the next biennium. And we had revenue estimating here in the state last week. So clearly we are, still in very much what I would call an emergent time. There's many things that we can't really understand yet about the revenue picture, what that's going to look like going forward. But I think this is reason to celebrate. And we should be happy that this happened. and we'll face what comes next together, but hopefully this is just a part of the continuing efforts that we're making to be able to resource the CCRR system in Oregon so that it can really serve childcare providers, especially during this time. I'm happy to take questions. I don't know how much they're, whatever they might be, I'm happy to take them, but also happy to just, have this moment of celebration that we all didn't have to face this on top of everything else. Yay! So we can be glad about that.
Yeah, are there any, I'm not seeing any hands raised other than in celebration. So I think that we can move forward. Good deal. All right. Thanks, Joan, for that. And we have you on for a few things. And I realized that I didn't get inserted in here that our DHS partners were on and could give a little bit of an update. So maybe I'll break up your agenda items so you can breathe for a minute and then come back in. And so, Jen, not to put you on the spot, or Regina, but hoping that you guys wouldn't mind speaking to some of the rapid changes that are happening on your side of the fence. So good morning.
Good morning. Well, we've been working on some policy changes to help support providers, especially those impacted by the wildfires, but we don't quite have that OAR, the rule change filed yet. And we'll be putting out a joint statement with ELD. We're working on getting some communications together, but just know that we're looking at that specifically for family or for providers who were impacted by wildfires and not able to operate. So if people are asking questions, just let them know something's in the works and we'll get communication out as soon as possible. And Regina, I don't know if we have anything else to give updates on.
So I don't know if the directors just wanted like a general state of where, like just a general rundown, I guess, of the policies that we do have in place. I'm not sure.
Would that be helpful to people? I saw some heads nodding. It seems like it, Regina, if you wouldn't mind, or Regina and Jen.
I would start by saying that I did send over, and I hope everyone got it. I know sometimes people don't get my emails because they're blocked. But I did send over the stakeholder and provider letters that we sent out talking about our distance learning practice or our distance learning guidance. So I don't know if there's questions about that. And if everyone got a chance to read that. And but besides that, we still have in place the exit limit for our income limit. We still have that in place through the state of emergency. We still have the ability for families to use a telephonic application to apply for ERDC so they don't have to come into a branch. We still have the $0 copay. It is set to go through the end of October right now. We're in talks about, if we could potentially extend that out further, but we don't have anything in place yet. Providers we still have the expanded absent day and temporary closure rules in place. So all those changes that we made in the beginning are still ongoing. So I don't know if there's specific questions that directors have that we could answer or clarify.
That was a good quick recap. Any questions, needs from the field, clarifications?
I'm not sure if anyone is currently on the list, but we do have a stakeholder list that we use to communicate changes within DHS. It's not all just ERDC. It encompasses, TANF and food stamps. So if directors are interested in getting on that list, I can give James Barta, who's like our outreach, partner outreach, your guys' names, and he can add you to that list if you're interested. Because they send out written communications quite frequently about changes. So
I saw 2 head nods, so that's pretty much consensus for this morning. Is that something you have the list available to you, Regina, to get them all on board? And anybody who does not want that list or to be on that list, it doesn't look like I'm seeing anybody who's like, no, don't keep me updated. So that's
okay.
a great idea. Thanks for bringing that forward.
Yeah.
Any other questions for our ODHS partners? I'm on with the branding strategy. I got this. In case we ever rebrand the CCRNRs, you know, we're on it. We've got it figured out on DHS side. No. All right. So thanks, Regina and Jen, for that and for letting me just sort of insert you in the middle of things. Moving on to the next item here, we have the health and safety template, which landed last week, and Joan is back on to talk about that a little bit. I also have the link in the agenda. If you haven't visited it yet, it is there for you.
So I just want to talk a little bit about this template. I think one of the most important things to understand is this template is optional. We put this together, actually Leslie Barnes and Carmen Ellis and another new staff at the Early Learning Division worked with me to kind of flesh out this template. And then we got feedback from licensors. And those of you know, Leslie's was prior to coming to ELD, was a child care provider for over 20 years. So she really was thinking about this template from the perspective of being a childcare business owner and what are the kinds of things that I would have to really think about and plan for if I was going to write a legitimate health and safety plan during the operation of COVID, operating during the time of COVID. So I want you to understand how much thought went into really thinking about this. And I think quite honestly, a perspective that we probably aren't necessarily getting enough childcare business owners to really want to have an actual plan, whether that's an emergency preparedness plan or a plan like this that we might in fact have people kind of skimming over the need for that. So and if you happen to look at ELD's Facebook page, you might have seen that there were actually some comments that were shared by some childcare providers that were not very positive, and said, you know, I wouldn't share this information with families. I wouldn't tell them these things. So if you've read the guidelines, you understand how important it actually is for families to receive information that they are supposed to receive. And they are indeed supposed to be able to ask for and look at a copy of the child care business owner's health and safety plan. Again, doesn't have to be in this template, but we will definitely at ELD be communicating with families that this is something they should ask for. It is something that every family should actually really care about, knowing what their child care provider is actually doing to ensure the safety of their children, their employees, themselves, the children's families. And if you're monitoring what's going on, you know that we are having COVID-19 outbreaks in childcare. So this idea that childcare is not a place where COVID-19 is going to hit is not correct thinking. So I want to say those things to you because not because I'm defending the template or think people need to use the template, but what I really care about, what we really care about is that people legitimately think through a plan and have something that they can share with families. And there's a variety of ways that that can happen. This template is not the end all be all for that. It has been translated into all 5 languages. There are 2 videos. I know, yay! We're really working on it. We're not perfect by any means, but we are legitimately really working on that. Also 2 videos, one in English and one in Spanish, kind of talking someone through the template and how to think about it, are also posted on our website. And then like a lot of resources associated with the plan that were developed by the Office of Child Care. So things that providers can look at, refer to, share with families. So I think that this product and these resources, along with the videos, and I mean, you've been seeing how we've been trying to really pull together what I think is TA and these videos from with the launch of the guidelines. We made a video about every single section. We hosted calls for people to get questions answers. We're developing resource materials. We're developing templates. So if you see other things that you think in addition to these things that we should really be thinking about, please, I hope you'll let us know. But I feel like we are making really good progress in actually having the kind of resources that childcare provider business owners really need to be safely operating during this time. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the template yet, I hope that you will. There's an example in there even that kind of shows how you might fill it out. And again, the template is optional. What really matters is people thinking through what they would actually do and being able to put that in writing and be able to share that with families and their staff. Because that was some of the feedback that we got when we were doing the guidelines and we had the open-ended survey up on the website. We heard from teachers who were worried and uncomfortable because they didn't really know what the people they were working for were actually, were they following all the guidelines? Did they understand what they were supposed to do with their roles? Should I have to be the one that's doing all the cleaning? So I just want to communicate to you, and I'm sure you all know this, teachers need to be able to understand what's happening in the settings they work in. And that's the other purpose of this plan. We don't need any other factors contributing to teacher turnover. And this is a time when it is very challenging for people to be working, especially when they're being asked to do more cleaning and more, direct interaction with the pickups and drop-offs and some of the other ways these things are happening. Teachers are the ones that are going out there and interacting and doing the temperature checks and things like that. So we feel very strongly that these plans are critically important. And we want, if there is an outbreak, we want to be able to understand, like, what were the guidelines being followed? What was the plan that was in place? Because again, all of us are committed to wanting to keep children, families, childcare providers, staff safe. That's what this is all about.
Thanks for that, Joan. Much appreciated. Are there questions? Comments? Thanks, Jessica, for pointing folks to the spot where they can request hard copies if providers are in need of a physical copy of this document. That is available. I will mention I had a couple of random opportunities to interact with providers last week, and I don't know why that occurred, but they were in contact with me, and I did hear one talking about a visit that they had, which must have been a pop-in visit from a licensing specialist, and they were out on the playground, and they had their masks on and with them, but kind of down under their chins, and they were cited for, not following the mask requirement. And they were, of course, I think in good faith, thinking they're on the playground. There's a lot of, good air movement out there, and they weren't holding any children close, but would have put them back on had the children come up. But this is part of, I think, what really is critical about the the art of going through the guidelines step by step to put together this plan, it really helps the provider think through exactly what they're doing in every kind of these circumstances moving forward, so that they don't slip into a mode where they aren't necessarily meeting the guidelines for whatever reason. And I think that example is just one of those where there's an intent around why each of those components are in the guidelines, and possibly if they'd had their plan fully baked, they may have realized that that was not going to meet the intent of those guidelines, and they could have sidestepped being cited for that. But I think the work that your team members are doing in support of providers to think through all of those aspects and supporting them as they put those plans in place is absolutely critical. And so, Jessica, I saw that you had your hand up, and hopefully still remember what you were wanting to say before I added to a diatribe around health and safety.
Yeah, actually, Shannon had the similar question in the chat, but so providers have to share this plan with their families in a way that families can understand by November 9th. It says that they don't have to submit it to ELD unless requested, but I was just curious, like Shannon mentioned, do they need to have it posted? Do they need to have it like readily available for their licensor, just to try and guide providers on where should they have that available?
You know, I would need to read exactly what it says in the guidelines, Jessica, which I don't have open in front of me. If somebody wants to get those open and look at that, I mean, if we're talking strictly what the guidelines say, that's, of course, what licensing is going to adhere to.
I don't want to put Tammy on the spot, but I saw her come off mute. So, Tammy, what do you think?
Oh, even better.
I was working, I was pulling out my guidelines because I'm like Joan. It's like I go to look and see what it actually says. And it says that, let's see here. I thought it said it needed to be posted. I'm doing a quick read. It says that it needs to be, oh, sorry, FedEx truck going by. It says it needs to be provided to families, but I do not see the word posted in here. Oh, wait a minute, here it is. Here it is. Will be shared with all families and staff and posted in an easily visible area. And so what I would suggest is that you take a couple minutes and watch the video about the health and safety plan, because I know that we did give some other examples of what that would look like. We also know that by the time you fill out the document, it's no longer 16 pages, it's going to be longer, and that parents are probably not going to stand there and thumb through a document that's posted. So an option that I believe we talked about in the video is that you can email it to your parents and then have a sign posted that says, you know, the health and safety plan was emailed to you on such and such date. So then the parent would know where to find it. Or if they wanted to stand there and look at it, you could have one available. But we know that parents aren't going to stand there and look at 20, 25 pages while they're checking their child in. So that was kind of a way around it, that you can email it and have it posted, letting them know where they can find it.
Thanks, Tammy.
And Tammy, on the side of showing documentation for staff being prepared or trained for this, is there a specific way that licensing is looking at that?
Yeah, so actually we made a really great document that can even get them training hours through Oro. So if you look in the links at the end of the template, there's a staff training document that takes you through the highlights of every single section, so a director can go through that with their staff and mark them off. I suggest doing that training along with the videos that we put out, so staff can watch the videos and go through and do that training document with the director, and then you can send in that front page for 2 hours of training credit.
Great suggestion. Other questions? and Joan might have said this and I might have missed it, but I will highlight that the CCRNRs are prominently cited at the front of the document as a place to go for support with their plan, and also for potential training that they may need. So don't be surprised if people are headed your way, because they will be.
Yeah. I think that we also did hear yesterday that AFSCME may have posted a version that is like on one page and part of a page of language that people would need to respond to. So I just want to make you, again, reiterate the point. The template is optional. What is really designed to do is to help people think through the things they need to make a plan for. So how you put it on paper, hopefully it's meaningful to you and your staff and families, but really trying to encourage people to, I hate to even say it this way, but take it seriously. Like, this is nothing to mess around with. And nobody wants to see their facility posted in the outbreak, you know, like we saw last week where we had 20 cases at one of the facilities. Like, we don't want that to be happening. So this is one of the ways that we can help people to really understand what they're going to do to help prevent that.
All right. Oh, Mary.
Joan, where can we see that ASME document? Where is that posted?
I'm assuming it would be on, what is it called? Child Care Providers Together. Isn't that what their Facebook
Yeah, it's on their Facebook page. I personally haven't even looked at it. I just heard through the rumor mill it was there, and I passed that word up, but I haven't even seen it.
Okay, thanks.
It's like it's an 8-point font. It's you'll see it. You'll know it when you see it.
I'm sure I will.
All right. Well, thanks for that, and good discussion around the health and safety template. Next on our agenda, Joan was just going to share a brief update that we have related to the supplies and opportunities grants. And Joan, do you want me to pull up that PowerPoint related to
Yeah,
this?
let me do the supplies while you're doing that.
Okay.
So as of last Friday, we had 2,348 orders for the care package of supplies. We had validated 2,043, which means that we said to the DAS warehouse, you know, permission to ship. So 2,000 orders are in the process of being shipped, and we're still working to validate the other information associated with the other orders. And I think we did communicate with all of you. We were a little bit worried about delays for shipping associated with the fires, but we understand that most of that's been cleared up at this point, and that we shouldn't be worried about delays. But I think you all understand that's a lot of orders. And, you know, it isn't like the Amazon warehouse in terms of how it's staffed. So people are working as quickly as they can to get the care packages shipped out. So that's what's happening on supplies. And then
I just wanted to note that Nancy put in the chat box that a provider ordered but received masks and nothing else. That's odd. Nancy, why don't you send me the name of the provider, and we'll follow up to make sure that wasn't some trail over of a previous ordering from our, because we had some orders that were fulfilled from the last go around of stuff just recently. It was almost like some glitch in the system kicked them out, and they got fulfilled. So that I'll look into that. And also, I just wanted to note for people that I asked for the list of providers that had already requested a supply order or package. So I was trying to lessen the load on our grants and other team members, but I do have the ability to look up who has submitted an order, because what happens is they get a little thank you when they submit, but they don't get any sort of a confirmation email. What I can tell you won't help them understand when they're going to get their orders, but it will help them if they're worried as to whether or not their order sort of achieved an official order. I do have that list. And if what I noticed is they ask for the program name and then I think some sort of a primary person's name. So if they know what they submitted, if they give me both those things, I can search both directions and hopefully at least give them peace of mind that they're in the queue and that they'll have an order. So I will gladly look those up for you in my spare time.
So I know you all kind of wanted to see an update. So this is the phase 1 grants awarded. This is in millions, just to make sure we're all on the same page with that. You can see the breakdown in terms of what % of providers received grants during phase 1. And over 50% of those, slightly over 50% of those went to family-based childcare. Just observation there. Okay, do you want to go the second slide, John?
Sure.
So in the phase 2, we've put out, awarded to date, almost $5 million. You can see the predominant folks who received funding in phase 2 were certified centers, less funding to certified family, registered family. And then the last slide, again, these are all as of last Friday, is around the supplemental grant awards. And these are still in process, many of these. So about half have gone to certified centers and recorded programs. Again, we're almost half have gone to registered and certified family. And then a small percent have gone to license exempt programs. So just giving you an update. We generally are getting an update like this every Friday. So as long as these things are still active, as long as we're still actively distributing supplies and still actively making grant awards, we can plan to give you an update like this, I think, every Tuesday when we get together, or whenever we get together, we can do it.
Joan, are you able to share the slides with people that are asking?
I need to find out if we can give the deck. It was shared internally. I just need to verify if that's possible for us to share with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
And Toby, I saw that you might have a question.
Yes, my question is, once everybody's taken these funds, and if there's any excess due to people not taking it, is the ELD going to reevaluate what's left over?
I don't know. I think that's a great question. I can ask. Some of these funds, like the CRF dollars, actually have to be spent by the end of December. And because the CRF dollars, the Coronavirus Relief Fund dollars, they were not childcare specific. They were awarded to states. And so my sense, what I understand so far, is if agencies don't have a viable plan to spend out the CRF funds they've been given, they need to go back into the Treasury so they can be spent by the end of December. But we'll ask Toby what the process will be if not all funds are claimed, and be able to talk to you about that next week.
Yeah, we just had some providers that didn't see a need for the extra money and didn't accept it. So I just didn't know what was going to happen with that. They said somebody else can take it, but we tried to explain that this isn't for anybody else. Please take it. And some of them just don't want it. So I didn't want it going to waste. I just want to make sure if there was a plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions related to supplies or grants? All right. Thank you for that update, Joan. You get a brain break for a few minutes while we transition to the next agenda item here related to Preschool Promise. And both Dana and Andy are on. I may have surprised them with the agenda item though, so I just want to check in. Are you folks, oh, they're smiling and ready to go. Sweet. So I'll turn it over to both of you.
I think there, Dana, did you want to start?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get this started. Good morning, everybody. Dana Yoon here, Preschool Promise Program Manager here at the ELD. John, if I can take the screen from you, that will be nice.
Sure. Let me work that angle.
Yeah. Alrighty, so we're going to just go ahead and give a quick, update on Preschool Promise and where we are. As many of you are aware of, like currently we're still in the process of, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Share screen. And disclaimer, we've been having a lot of computer problems here lately, so it's taking just a little bit longer here to get everything up and running. Oops.
Yeah, while she's getting that up and running, did any of you experience the wonderful Microsoft issue yesterday that was like not just an internal IT thing, but kind of a worldwide deal? It was exciting. I got to change my password 14 times and then try and get it to actually log in to get emails in the afternoon, and none came in. So I got caught up on what was there. Okay, did that give you enough time, Dana?
Yeah, can you guys see my screen? Because now I can't see you guys. Yes? Okay, cool. So anywho, so right now with Preschool Promise, there's two things that the division is really working on right now. So one of them is obviously getting all of our contracts like fully executed and signed by the grantees. So far, as of this morning, we have about 29 grantees across the state that haven't signed their contract. So our grants and ops team is going to be doing more of a targeted, contact with them and just kind of checking up on them and see, where is their intention with their Preschool Promise contracts. So about 29. The other thing that we're really working on is really getting our grantees to go through the EGUMS registration. So it's awesome to go ahead and have a contract, but you need to go ahead and establish an account with the state. So that's another, you may have been seeing some emails, reaching out to grantees as far as getting that process up and running. And then with our grants and ops team is really working on providing some of that technical support to our grantees that may need a little bit of assistance, especially those who prefer to go ahead and go through this process in Spanish. So we've been in communication with that on how do we help them just kind of move through this process. I think as we are moving forward, some great resources for you guys to go ahead and use. So we developed this little slide here with you with links, and I'll go ahead and send it to John so you guys can have that available. So here's some resources that you can go ahead and use or refer your providers to. One of them is going to be our ELD website. We do have an area right now for Preschool Promise, and it has all of the documents pretty much that I'm listing here in English and in Spanish for grantees to go ahead and look at that. So definitely look at the website as we move forward. We're going to be doing a lot of updates to our website and all of the stuff, but at least for in the meantime, please visit and make sure that you are in tune with some of this in case they come across in conversations. So we have the website, grant manual, that's really everything related to Preschool Promise in regards to like the grant requirements for the grantee and also some of the Preschool Promise quality requirements for this implementation year. In there, you're also going to go ahead and find the grant agreement. It is available in English and Spanish. This came out over the past, week regarding grantees signing. the contract in English, but maybe they may have not been aware of that there was a copy available in Spanish for them to actually go ahead and see what they were signing. So if you come across that situation, please refer your providers to go ahead and take a look at the Spanish grant agreement there. And then obviously our FAQ document, super important. We try to go ahead and get that updated as fast as we can. So I've included the link there as well. And then for your reading pleasure, you can always look at the RFA. The old RFA is not available on this link, so I just included the link in there if you ever want to go back and just kind of read that. I'll go ahead and have Andy kind of take over and talk about the other documents that are coming soon for you all to go ahead and use as a resource. So Andy, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Good. Yeah, so on the way are some additional resources that are really intended to support the onboarding and the understanding of the requirements, which are the ones that Dana's listed below. They will outline the requirements. So all of the expectations for our Preschool Promise providers are already out there and available for both the grantees and for all of you to take a look at. The Preschool Promise Playbook is going to be a document that we hope will be not a static document, but really one that can continue to grow with every provider's experience and with as we are able to release more and more resources around Preschool Promise. So it will take the program requirements, which are outlined in the grant manual, and just go a little deeper with them. And so it will give not only a little bit more of a fleshed out explanation of the requirement, but it will also provide examples of what it may look like in practice. It will provide some resources. It will provide some reflective questions that maybe your staff are asking providers or providers are asking themselves, or in a focused childcare network, maybe that's something that is thought about. So that's the intention of the playbook, is that it's an additional resource for people to go to when thinking about the Preschool Promise requirements. The onboarding calendar will be a calendar that is about onboarding. We're very creative with our naming around here lately. So that's going to be a time for the CCRR and for the grantees, in some cases to come together, in some cases differently, to talk about the requirements around Preschool Promise and get people up to speed. And I know I was out yesterday, but I know that there were some conversations yesterday around that onboarding calendar, which would include some specific webinars. So the onboarding calendar would be the calendar of the webinars and that onboarding piece. Additionally, we are still working and pushing out a reflective guide for providing Preschool Promise, as well as our other publicly funded childcare programs during COVID. And the purpose of that is, again, just a resource for providers to be reflective, to be thinking through, to be planning for possible pivots, but also to be really thinking about how are we still developing and providing quality early learning experiences during COVID. And also an emphasis on the instructional leadership. What does leadership look like during a crisis, especially when the crisis becomes the norm? So that's also another piece that will be coming out to folks. We hope shortly. We're in the final phases of that, but then also there is some time for translation as well. So I think that those are the bulk of the on the way pieces that I am remembering right now. There's a lot of different balls we're juggling. We do appreciate your patience, and we thank you very much for that. There's a lot of materials we're trying to finish, and sometimes it takes a little slower when you're trying to do them all at once. But we are bringing those forth. But just as a reminder for Preschool Promise folks who will be delivering services in any way other than a traditional non-COVID time, they do need to fill out that waiver. And in that waiver, they do need to describe how they'll be meeting the Preschool Promise requirements during the time of COVID. We know that on our end, we're going to have some additional conversations and considerations as we continue to navigate through this time, as folks are looking at, for example, their calendars, they're looking at different ways to implement that we may need to have some additional conversations individually with grantees about some requirements that they may feel particularly challenged to meet. So it's certainly, I say that to say that these resources are not going to be the end. Again, we're hoping that they evolve and change over time, and we can add as our understanding grows. Shannon, I see your hand, but I wanted to check in real quick. Dana, is there anything else you wanted to add?
The only thing to go ahead and add will be that this weekend we're hoping to go ahead and release that the budget templates. We sent out a communication last week. You know, I think one thing with Preschool Promise is that all of our grantees are in different kind of tiers, right? You're going to have those providers that are up and running with their EGUMS claim, and they're ready to go ahead and move to the next step. There's some that are kind of need help, and some of them are in between. There was an email that went out last week to all grantees on Friday informing them that they will be able to go ahead and start making claims for Preschool Promise. On the grant manual, we did clarify that in order to go ahead and make a claim, technically speaking, they have 60 days to go ahead and submit a budget from the day that their contract was executed. So that's kind of one deliverable. They can still go ahead and submit a claim for Preschool Promise, but super important that they go ahead and finish all of the EGUMS process and registration and everything. So I think that, I mean, I think here at the division, we're really trying to make an effort. We know that our providers need money. Many of them need money to go ahead and start their programs. So our grants and office has been working like super hard to get that out. So one of the templates that's going to be sent out will be the budget. The other one that's going to be sent out will be for startup and continuous quality improvement funds. All of our grantees receive some sort of startup or continuous quality improvement funds. Those are only one-time funds to go ahead and help the implementation of Preschool Promise this year. In order for them to go ahead and get like funds dispersed to them to go ahead and get and use those funds, or actually just really submit the claim and then for us to approve it, they do need to go ahead and submit that. So stay tuned for that email to go ahead and come by the end of the week with all of those different templates and a request that providers need to go ahead and complete. I think one thing as we're moving forward is I'm hoping, and we're all hoping, that we get into this really just continuous communication with our grantees. Now that they're like full-on grantees, you're going to go ahead and start seeing a lot more emails, a lot more contact, a lot more webinars, a lot of that stuff. Whereas before, you know, them signing the contract is a little bit challenging just because it was an RFA and of everything that the state has to offer. But so stay tuned on that and more to come on that.
So, did I cut you off, Dana? Sorry.
Nope, that's all I have.
Okay, so I see that, yes, Shannon is waiting, and then maybe we can loop back to a question from Eva in the chat box. Go ahead, Shannon. Hey, Shannon, you're in Mickey Mouseville today, like Mary usually is. Oh, sorry, not usually. Mary has been on occasion. While Shannon's working hers out, Eva's question was around around class, and what are the expectations for that in this first funding year?
This is Dana. I'm hearing some background, and I don't know if it's you.
It's still Shannon.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dana. Yeah, great question on class. And I think with this next year of implementation, right now, as far as the guarantees, there's no action item for them right now. I think that's something that we're going to go ahead and be looking here internally at the state, like when do we launch it, how, what kind of training and all that. So I think the biggest takeaway right now is no action required from the grantee point of view. Andy, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but okay, cool. Thank you. Oh, and then And I'm sorry, point of clarification. On that email that went out on Friday, it spoke to an email that's going to go out today. We kind of, we were working really hard and now overwhelm our grantees with this ginormous emails that are so long and stuff. So one thing is that the templates are we're hoping to go ahead and launch them by the end of the week. That email that will go out today is that we've been getting a lot of questions about the use of startup and like how do they use it, what are some of the tools and resources. So there's an email, what we're calling like an email guide that's going to be sent out today, kind of with some checklists and resources and stuff that can go ahead and guide them to go ahead and make those informed decisions on how they're going to be using their startup. So that's the communication today. It's really focused on startup and providing guidance and clarity on the use of startup funds. And then later on this week is going to be the templates and all that fun stuff. Okay, now I'll stop. Go ahead.
So let's see. Looks like Shannon's still experiencing some issues with her audio, but I want to loop back to her comments in the chat box. Taya, go ahead and go, and then we'll loop back to that.
Thank you. It might be kind of related to what Shannon is saying. I just need to share the difficulty that we're having right now. And I kind of anticipated that this might be an issue, but we have a general idea of the work we'll be doing, even though we don't have our contracts yet. And of course, providers are coming to us now. And the problem that we have is that I have a really experienced quality improvement specialist ready to go with Preschool Promise. But all of the questions, almost entirely all of the questions right now have to do with grants and contracts and, like I said, we kind of anticipated this because a lot of these providers don't have any experience with that sort of thing. And the quality improvement specialist who's on this project, she doesn't have any experience with that stuff either. And so I don't know if other directors are having this issue, but I just don't think we're serving the providers the way they need to be served. And it's not realistic for me to support 22 providers and how to handle their contracts. And so I just want to put that out there, maybe even for later discussion, but we're really stuck right now. And I feel like these questions are piling up for the providers and we don't have the right, with it being a Preschool Promise or QIS and then later a coach, those people aren't really going to be able to give that kind of support. We thought it would be coming from the ELD, so maybe just a little more clarity around how we can help the providers through that, given the fact that we don't really have a person in that role.
I can add a little bit to that, and as we thank you for your patience and flexibility. I think internally here at the ELD, we're also trying to go ahead and navigate through these waters. We have a lot of grantees needing a lot of support and assistance. We've added some capacity to our to the way that we're handling communication with our grantees in hopes that we can go ahead and get an answer out to them a little bit faster. One thing that I would add is that for any of our grantees, because we check kind of like the calls that we're getting, this phone number that I'm putting right here on the chat box, that is the number for the grants and ops team that can really go ahead and answer questions about like the grant agreement and the contract, right? Well, it's not a contract, it's the grant agreement. So I will say, but when we are, throughout the information that we're getting is that people are not calling that number. So I think that's one thing that you guys can all go ahead and help us do, is that if they are having some questions related to the actual like grant agreement, direct them to this number. That is the number available for their grant manager. It's going to go ahead and go to someone that can go ahead and answer the phone, and then it goes up to like their grant manager. We have Anthony and Rania that kind of each, if you look at that the grant manual, like they've divided the state into different regions, and then they can go ahead and follow up and contact them. On our end, we get a lot of calls, like for the program unit, those are handled by Angela, and then there's like a process for that. But if what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of grantees out in on the grant that are having questions related to their grant agreement, like insurance, not sure what this means on the grant agreement, direct them to that phone number for grants and ops team so they can be connected to their prospective grant manager.
Okay, so that's helpful too, to know that I mean, I do have, part of the reason is staff are always wanting to be as helpful as they can, and they probably are hesitant to send to a number, but I can definitely remind them of that. And the other reason I was asking was because of the information that you shared earlier, which is helpful, but right, the links about here's the RFA, here's that, you know, all of the detailed things. Like, I'm just kind of trying to figure out how much a QIS needs to dig down into those details and understand about it. But it sounds like when it really is related to those things, we should send them to that phone number.
Correct. Please do. And then what we look forward to now with the, you know, at a capacity and all the resources here internally is that we now have to go ahead and grab the grant manual and almost like, you know, if you guys all remember the RFA, it was so big, like people didn't know where to start. People were really confused. I think our biggest, what we're going to be working on, which is going to be part of that onboarding, is really grabbing that grant manual, making it succinct. How do we make people help them provide with the assistance? Another thing that, you know, just in thinking about the grantees and everything that's going on right now, is that we really do want to let grantees know that with this grant, we want them to be successful, right? I think many people get into this contracts with the state and says, here's your deliverables, John. And so they may be a little bit hesitant to go ahead and call the state and say, I don't understand what you mean here. What do you mean here, right? Because with other state agencies, it's like you get what you get. You told us that you can achieve that deliverable, and that's the expectation. With this program, I think there's some messaging that we need to share out there, is that we want them to be successful. There are resources, and we totally apologize that we're not able to return the calls and the emails as fast as we will want to, but we're really trying to go ahead and increase capacity to do that. So that will be more to your question about like the links in the documents, is that we can go a little bit more in depth during some of those onboarding webinars and opportunities.
Thank you.
So I see Mary Wolf has a question.
Well, I have a question and a comment, and I wanted to say that in our region, providers are very frustrated and anxious and really looking for information. And then we heard from one of our, Preschool Promise providers that we've been working with before, that she was part of a statewide meeting that I think ASME might have been pulling together, and they were getting together Preschool Promise programs to go through the manual, which we had no idea about that at all. And then she sent that list of questions, which was really helpful to have answered. And I guess my, main point is communication is really important. Even if you're saying, we know you need this, but we don't have it quite yet, but it's coming. That, providers, they really want to get started. They don't know how to do it. They have questions about the contract. We have, 10 Spanish-speaking providers. And I agree with Shannon. We don't want to feel like we don't have the answer for them, or that somebody else has given an answer and we don't know what it is, because we want to feel like we're there as a resource that can really help.
I do think there is a component of this, and I agree that as much as possible, providers do need to go to the source to get their answers around the grant requirements and that sort of thing. But I believe that it's going to be hugely important for, as you guys receive those courtesy copies, like you received one this morning, that's sort of a courtesy copy. Sometimes they come from Joan on behalf, or Aaron on behalf of Joan. Look for those, get those in the hands of your staff that are interacting with providers, because it really is, the things they need to do before they even get access to drawing down funds are also things that they're going to have questions about, like the process to get their EGMs set up. That's not an easy thing. Yes, the grants team can support around that, but I believe there may be a role for you to help them, go through those motions. And there's a step-by-step bit of information related to that. And then the one that we just sent out this morning, really outlines some of those other things that Dana was talking about. But if your staff aren't prepared to help guide providers back through those steps, then more confusion, erupts from there. And it's the same thing that Tammy mentioned earlier about the health and safety guidelines. If your folks get a question, or if people are saying, this is going to be the requirement, like I see in the chat box everything from, CCRNRs are going to help with TS Gold, and it sounds like it's going to be that CCRNRs are, paying for that, or a source of making sure that occurs. Go to the manuals around this stuff. If it's not in writing, those documents are the expectation for providers. And so, use your tricks. Do everything from search and find for things that relate to TS Gold, and see if that kind of stuff's really in there. And I think the thing is you folks have to go to the source material first and read through that. And your people will need to know those things fairly inside and out. And I see Nancy shaking her head, but the point is, there's everything from what you're going to be doing from TA to just knowing the material. But if a provider asks you a question, you can forward them on to the division, but you can also say, let's pull it up right now and take a look. And I think that's what we're hoping is part of the process that the CCRNRs are doing. You're not supposed to know the answer to everything, but you have the material in front of you. And I don't want other partners to bring rumor into the process, which then just makes your folks feel like you're not in the know. And you are in the know, probably more than others. And so I just, that kind of stuff gets people's wheels turning in the wrong way. You have what documents are available currently. You see the correspondence that is happening for providers. You know what's being provided to them. And in some cases, they just need to have somebody kind of walk them through, like, here's what you have in front of you, and this is what's available. And then, of course, there's going to be more. And we need to know from you what, and I think what level of I think Dana's mentioning there's going to be calls where providers are getting information. Of course, CCRNRs can be invited to hear that information too. But what information do you feel like you're going to need so we can go through the process of putting, other opportunities together where we can speak to preparing your team? But Nancy, you've been waiting a long time. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. I had to shake my head no, because we don't have staff that are doing these things. Right now, I'm the go-to person for our preschool promise sites because I don't have staff who can do that. Noemi's working with our one Spanish speaker. When is the grant amendment going to come out? I know that's the big elephant in the room for all of the directors, because as Shannon was saying, I'm starting to feel like my credibility is going way down with these preschool promise grantees because we don't have the support staff to help them. Yes, they can call the state, but they're going to call us. I mean, I have one right now who's setting up an appointment with me so I can help her figure out budget, because that's not something she's really done at this level before. So that ends up on my plate, and my plate's full. So that's the bottom line for me. I don't, oh, you know me, John, I'm going to be honest with you, but for 2 months we heard, oh, in a couple of weeks, oh, in a couple of weeks. Okay, now we haven't even heard that in over a month. So what's happening?
So here's where we're at on the grants, and it's not the information you want to hear, but we'd love to be able to say those are ready. They're going to be, in your hands to be signed. They're not. We're in the we're in the middle of ensuring that the resources that have been committed are there, and so that has been paused for the moment to make sure that our budgets that are coming out to you are as solid as they can be. So what that puts us in the place of, and Nancy, I want to honor what you're saying, and I know that it is probably pretty consistent across the board, that everybody is stretched, and that putting some level of this work in each of your organizations before you have resources to hire people is a difficult expectation. And what I guess I want to make sure we're doing, because I guarantee you the money is not landing as fast as you need it. I mean, that I can tell you. And this whole thing of saying we hope to have more information in 2 weeks, or the grants are currently in our hands, not in ODE's hands. So it's you can bet it's going to be longer than you want it to be. So my guess is we'll be talking about this for the month of October, and hopefully getting those grants into your hands to sign. Now, what doesn't change is that when childcare providers need training, support, TA, you're their go-to. And I know that you don't have, team members specifically doing Preschool Promise, but you have team members that do quality improvement work. And these providers are the same providers that existed in your community before you were told that you were going to be Preschool Promise TA. That doesn't give you capacity. I totally understand, but it is something that I don't feel like a provider should feel like they don't have the CCRR support system behind them. There's a lot that you can't answer. The grant stuff, I hope you didn't hear me say that I was wanting you to support that. Those questions still need to go to the division. Providers are still going to feel a little bit in limbo around that. But as far as what they're trying to think of related to how to do quality services for children and families, you guys know that stuff inside and out. The Preschool Promise Manual and those expectations that are in there are not anything wildly different than what you've been trying to help providers achieve. And I guess what I'm saying is many of those folks that have been identified, I shouldn't say many, some of those folks that have been identified are already in your networks. I don't want to embellish the fact that you're not already connected to them. There is work already going on with these folks, and you are a foundation for them that they should be able to turn to. When we are talking about all of the requirements that they need to meet ongoing, you do need staff in place in order to do that, and it's going to take you a period of a few months to even get to that place. We understand that too. But the answer can't be that the CCRR can't answer questions until staff are hired, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I know Nancy has a follow-up. Karen's waiting after that. I'm sure there's more questions.
John, I don't think it's, at least part of my concern is not as much with the family child care providers, because we have those relationships and we can work with them. It's the Head Starts and the school districts and the ESDs and those folks that we needed to be established and ready to support them from the beginning of this, because those are the ones that don't have that relationship with us, and they're the ones that we have to prove to them we know what we're doing. And right now I'm not feeling like I can do that. So when I have ESD superintendents calling me and I just don't feel fully equipped to be able to handle those things and to have staff who can be trained to handle those things. So it's not the family child care providers, you know, we'll maintain our relationships with them. That's not the issue. It's the broader scope.
Thanks for that, Nancy. I definitely understand some of those connections aren't there, and some of those entities don't want a connection, and you need to be able to be poised to be in the right space, to be a resource, and for them to consider you one. So I appreciate that. And so Karen, and then folks who've been putting stuff in the chat box, I'm not even going to try. So if you want to speak to it after Karen, just raise your hand.
So a couple of things, the good conversation so far. One thing that I'm having trouble with is in the community, everybody's got what they assume our role is, right? And so there's all these assumptions, people are misinterpreting, and how can we come together and say, this is CCRR's reality right now, and this is what they can do. And to expect that kids can be in seats by October 31st without CCRRs having a contract, how is that realistic? You know, and how do we work with, can we have some kind of a unified meeting with hubs, with providers to communicate this with them, instead of us feeling like we don't have a contract, da, 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 da. And, you know, regardless we don't have a contract, regardless that we know Spark, etc., but we're kind of overtasked right now in so many things, and there are a lot of stress around that for team members. And when they're getting questions that they can't answer, that's really hard for them because they are the helping field. So I just want to put that out there. You know, how can we have better communication to all the parties involved so that it's not coming from us, but coming from ELD about what our situation is?
Thanks, Karen. Dana and Andy, I didn't know if you were trying to chime in, didn't want to interrupt.
Well, I mean, I also didn't want to interrupt. I think these are all important questions, and I think it's giving us a lot of food for thought around communication and around really clarity of I think of roles and work pieces. And I think right now that the only thing I'd want to say is to re-emphasize that the ELD is not expecting the CCRRs to be grant specialists. And I think that we have to be very clear and really put a stake in that ground that the ELD has established a grants team for the purpose of granting directly with Preschool Promise providers. And that team is knowledgeable, skilled, and poised to support providers with their grant questions. And it will be, I think, behoove everybody if we all work together to overemphasize that. And I know it's hard. I'm from that helping field. We're all in that helping field. Like, I come on these calls and I hear the questions and I make a list, and then I have to stop myself because half of the things on my list are not my role to do, but I want to help. And so it's hard to say, this is not a question for me to help you with, and to really reframe that the help is getting them into the right place. And there are challenges with communicating with the state. We understand that. We're both the part of the machine and outside of the machine. But I think it will be in everybody's best interest, including the grants team, just to keep re-emphasizing to providers that if it's a grant question, the grants team is there to help. If it's a question about how to enroll in Spark, you guys are there to help. You know how to do that, right? And that is really what all we're really hoping for right now from our grant providers, or our granted providers, is that they know how to get into EGMs to get paid, and that they know how to enroll in Spark. And other things will continue to build. You know, we're not expecting people to high jump this. It's an escalator. So what's the first step? Call your grant manager, get into EGMs so you can get paid. Step 2, are you in Spark? No? Great. We have a process for that. You are? Fantastic. What are some of the things you're working on? And then helping folks from there. We do not expect everybody to be up and running and perfect by October 31st. We are there to support. We are there to evolve as the year goes by. And I think it would also help us all sometimes to take a deep breath and remember that while there is a sense of urgency, it is not a sense of do or die. And it doesn't have to be perfect the first time.
This is so definitely. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we will definitely, there's some opportunities to go ahead and get message out to our grantees about the 2895 number, and then we'll go ahead and ensure that internally those resources are available. Because like I said, the feedback I'm getting, there's not a lot of calls there, so there's opportunities for us to increase the awareness and calls, and then also realize what Karen and I think Shannon was also put on the chat boxes. Because we did put it on the grant manual, like you can call your CCRR for technical assistance. I think there's some clarity to us for the grantee, because they're saying, well, I'm here. I like to be very strength-based, and it's a good thing that they're actually calling. So that's a good thing, right? I think we can all be happy with that. And I think there's help that we can go ahead and provide on just kind of like share information about the expectations on what they can help what you guys can help right now as we're moving through this process and stuff. So thank you. And I think I cut off somebody. I don't know who.
Yeah, I think we've got Nancy Patton, Mary Wolf, maybe Jerry Wolf. Eva Manderson has things in the chat box. So let's start back with Nancy, head to Mary, then Jerry, then Eva.
And I'm actually Shannon at the moment, because Shannon can't talk. Shannon has asked if ELD could issue a letter to the preschool promise providers that CCRR supports in the works, and so that someone besides us are saying, hey, we're working on it. We're here to support you on this, this, and this. We'll also have staff coming at some point. So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I went ahead and I responded, and I can bring that back to our communications team. And another piece that I would remind everybody is that as grantees go through onboarding, they'll learn a lot more about who to call, when to ask. And that's going to be part of the playbook and the handbook and a lot of other resources and webinars. So yeah, they should be getting this information from several different sources.
All right, Mary.
So, I'd mentioned communication, which I think is so important. And I think this was really brought home when we got the answers to the questions that this other group had posed, which were so helpful. And many of our providers had been asking, but we hadn't known about it. And they were things like, could there be rolling enrollment? When could they start? Providers are really concerned about, if a child starts, do they need to get the 900 hours in, which really all have an impact right away on how they're going to structure their program. So I'm just sort of re-emphasizing that even if you don't have the answers, providers have lots of questions, and it's really helpful to them just to know, we know you do, it's coming. We'll share them with our R&R too as soon as we know. I think really the more communication, the better.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Mary. And just to clarify, that meeting that Mary is talking about, that was not put together by the ELD. Sounds like a group of providers got together and they were collaborating, and then we got an email with lots and lots of questions. One thing that was very very clear on that email for me is that some of them were questions that have already been answered on the FAQ, or maybe they were sent like on the email. Like, for example, the rolling question was in some of the communications. So go ahead and go back out. I think there's, from our communications department will really be, as we need to go ahead and set some processes on like these emails sometimes are pretty long, and we need to start kind of making them a little, because I think people are missing a lot of key information, and there's some more to come on that. And I will say that right now, those emails that go out to the grantees, sounds like we had a delay from the one that was sent out on Friday, but how we have it established right now is as soon as we get an email out to the grantees, then a couple hours after it goes to the CCRNRs and the hubs. We're trying to work that it just goes at the same time so everybody gets there at the same time. But I will echo what John said, like those emails that we say, this is an email that was sent out to all the grantees. Really, they contain like super important information that the reason why we want you guys to get them really fast is because we know they're going to call you guys and say, I got this email from the state and I'm not sure what they're talking about. So yeah, but thank you for bringing that up. In regards to those 18 questions, Angela, our communications, Gail is doing like a crosswalk of what was included in those that may have already been answered, and then they need to be added so we can update them in this week's FAQ. So thank you.
And I think it did make me feel like, well, this is a statewide group that's meeting, and the CCRNR should be the ones that are, they're going to for that. And I had no idea. So it was concerning to us. So thank you, Dana, for responding so quickly.
Thanks, Mary. Jerry, go ahead.
I think it's my turn. So I just want to say that we've been meeting with our Preschool Promise grantees pretty much since the list came out on a weekly basis with our Early Learning Hub. And our message along the way has been, whenever a new program starts, it's messy. And that's just a part of the reality of it, and that we're all a team, and that, that we're working well, that we're working together. And I think that just calling that out, just saying that we totally get that, there are a lot of questions, and some of those, and we need you to ask those questions and then, help you find where those answers are. And so we've been trying hard to just be the place where that happens in our region. And I think that those conversations have been really robust. I will say that when it comes to the whole workload issue, that means that we're not doing something else probably pretty well. And so just while we're developing these relationships with our Preschool Promise providers on a weekly basis and putting quite a bit of resource in there, again, that means the staff that are doing that are not doing something else, and that might be not doing a very good job on their focus network logs. That's been, I would say right now, that's probably our worst place. But anyway, I just do think that just calling it out and saying it's messy, it's new, we're all learning together, is helpful for everyone. So just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Jerry. And I appreciate an example of the efforts that are going on in your community. And I totally also want to honor the fact that some regions have not had the ability to put that together. And when we're stretched for our staff to be involved or yourselves to be involved in those conversations, it's not always that easy. So I realize that Jerry is making you all look bad. No, I'm sorry. That was terrible. Oh, so terrible. I couldn't help myself. And that's not true. You guys are all doing, I've heard it I've been on calls with all of you all in the last week, and I've heard it all week long, what efforts are going on in your communities and what connections you've been making with Preschool Promise providers and others. And so I know there's a lot of competing priorities. And so that was an unfair and inappropriate comment that you can all take out on me later. But Eva, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it's a little bit of the repeat of what everybody else is talking about, the communication being really important. I had a moment of wondering whether some of the calls that the ELD was doing for childcare providers as we had new guidance come out, if something like that might be an option for communicating with hubs and CCRR and ELD and preschool promise providers, just so we're not playing the telephone game, because I think there's a little bit of that happening. And that I think would also help with just sharing with our programs and our community that we're not at capacity right now, and we really quickly can lose a lot of credibility, especially as Nancy said, with school districts. They think we're ready to be there at the ready, and we've got school districts who are starting preschool programs who have never done anything with early learning before, and trying to build a relationship and then help them up. We just don't have the manpower for that. I noticed Nancy's comment in here about staffing, and I would just reiterate that as well. I've had my positions posted now for over a month, and I have very few applicants, and none that are bilingual, none that are in my counties. There are people applying for Portland that think they're going to virtually attend programs, and so I think the hiring piece is also really complicated in COVID times.
Thanks for that also, Eva. And I know you're not alone in your recruitment attempts that have not yielded qualified people. So I think, we're also describing, not only do we need to get over the hurdle to where you have the resources in your coffers so you can utilize them, then we get to the place where you have to actually hire people that can do the work. And so we're talking about multiple layers. And so let's see, I can't remember if I missed anyone on the list. If there's someone else who has a question related to this topic, please raise your hand. And with Dana and Andy, what is the next what is the next thing that we can put into place? I think that'll be part of the resource for CCRNRs. I mean, is it going to be the grantee webinar that we're having them sit in on? Is there something in between that, like the playbooks? I just was sort of wanting to get back to, is there a like this, then this, then this scenario, or are we able to say that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I can go ahead and add a little bit, and I'm sure Andy will go ahead and have some more. I think one of the things that we're starting to go ahead and have those discussions is how to facilitate the big Welcome to Preschool Promise kind of a webinar with all the grantees, and then with the CCRNRs to be a part of it with Preschool Promise, because it's mixed delivery, and I would say that many of you will agree with me. We have the providers that are available during the day. We have the providers that are only going to be available during the evening. We have to go ahead and do the ones that are going to be in Spanish, because everything that comes from the ELD has to be at the very least in English and Spanish. So just give us a little bit of grace on how to, as we're trying to go ahead and figure out like this this logistics, but super important pieces, because we don't want to have like a webinar in the middle of the day and then all of our grantees are going to come back at us saying how insensitive we are because they're taking care of children. So, but that is one thing to go ahead and come. And I think, like I said, for me, the biggest takeaway is that we will be connecting with their grants and ops team and saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and beef up the 2895. So grantees can go ahead and contact that number. That way you guys are not put in that situation. And then obviously communication out to go ahead and really share with our grantees what are the expectations right now, or where are we at with the CCRNRs? What can they help you with right now? So Andy, I don't know if you have something to add there.
No, mainly because I was out yesterday, so I missed the meeting around calendaring the onboarding. But I can tell you that the Playbook, our friends from the Ounce of Prevention Fund have been working on that as part of their work around the early learning standards that they developed. And so we will be seeing a draft of that shortly. I believe that there is a draft and there's some formatting questions. So hopefully by the end of next week, that'll all be finalized. And then we would actually like to see if there is a time when some of you could also provide some feedback around the clarity of the language of the playbook and some of those things that we've done before with the standards. And so that I can say is to come in the next few weeks. So there's that piece.
All right. And so you said the calendaring of the onboarding session, that's still info to come. We don't have dates for that. Is that correct?
There may be some
That's
kind
correct.
of date. Yeah, I was out yesterday.
Okay.
I don't know anything. I'm catching up. One day equals a week.
It definitely does. So any other comments, questions? I think that the ask for more communication is and as regular as possible is important. I also think that as we're putting together the material for that onboarding, if there's a way to state that the CCRR's support to the system of preschool promise programs is being developed and on the way, we'll help, or we'll start crafting that. And I think we might want to revisit what that might sound like with you folks, because the last thing I want to do is make it sound like the CCRR system is not there for them. I mean, I think I would rather you be half there for them and them thinking that it's just getting started than thinking that they don't have a place to turn. So I just want to be very careful how we message that, I guess, is all I'm trying to say. But I totally agree that if there's a way to say that the resources have not landed with your organizations and that you are still a resource in the community, you know, we can work on that message. And I had another thought, but it's gone. So I think at this point, though, oh no, sorry, it was back to, you know, when the money is going to arrive, and I want you to be aware that the division has a true understanding that these two components, the program's actually getting their signed agreements knowing that they're going to be grantees to provide services to children, and your TA support should have been on the exact same road to where you had those resources available to you from the point that we have, you know, grantees ready to seek TA, and that's not where it's at. And I think we can have lots of conversation about the whys of that. But I think the biggest issue at this point is us being able to confidently ensure that every resource that we're trying to commit to you, all those estimates that we've given you are there. And there was a hiccup in the middle of that process that paused the forward movement of those draft grants to the Department of Ed to finalize it. And so I want you to be aware that we're pushing as quickly as we possibly can to ensure that it's moving, but that was not something that we thought was going to be an issue. And I think the simplest way to describe it is some of these funds are SSA funds, and there needs to be the ability to ensure that there's enough receipts on what was supposed to be generated as revenue to commit the dollars that are going out the door. And with everything from COVID to otherwise affecting our economy, it's a little hard to estimate those things. And I think that's part of the picture. And so as soon as we confidently have the ability to say that if those receipts don't come in the way that we think they are, where are we pulling the rest of the funds to make this a reality? Those grants move forward. And I think that's the difficulty at this point. So apologies for leading you on to believe that those would come soon. And we all know that that's never the case. and we've had this for various reasons in other situations. But as soon as we have more information on that side, we'll loop back to you. So much appreciated. And I think there's more comments in the chat box. Anyone who wants to highlight those? I just want to make sure that if there's some, we can download our chat box and look at them later. But if there's somebody who wanted information out in or answered, please raise your hand. Mary, and then Christine.
So I'm just asking this because Dana's here and I can get an answer. When they talk about 25% of the general fund they can request, what does that mean exactly?
That's a great question. So what we mean is that it's 25% of their total awarded amount. So if they, so it's their total awarded amount, there's going to be, so if a provider was awarded $100,000, they can go ahead and, for that general, they can go ahead and make a claim for up to 25% of that. For the startup, they can actually go ahead and claim the full amount of startup because we know that they're going to need startup. But for that one, it will require for them to go ahead and submit kind of like their plan on how they're intending on spending the startup funds. But so if we think about it on that, it's going to be, we're trying to go ahead and get money out to providers so they can go ahead and get their program up and running.
So do they need to have their budget in before they can claim it?
Not for the services. No, in the grant manual, it actually says that they have 60 days from the day that they have a fully executed contract to go ahead and submit that budget. So for that one, they have 60 days. So I think the most important thing to go ahead and remember is like the steps to go ahead and get a claim. They have to have a fully executed contract and they need to finish up all the EGOMS process and stuff. So then they can go ahead and do a claim. And then it provided guidance as far as like, I can submit a claim today, but it's not going to be approved until the following Monday. That's one thing to go ahead and like remember that, the claims, but more to come on that. I think we need to go ahead and send, do a couple of webinars or more communication, but that was kind of like the high level that we wanted to go ahead and get out last Friday. It's like, you can start making claims. You need to finish that EGOMS process. And then we're not, because of what the grant manual says, is like they don't have to submit that budget prior to making a claim. Technically, it's there that they have 60 days.
Great, thank you. And my last question, John, will any of that funding roll over that's going to the R&Rs?
So this question's come up from multiple folks. And so you're talking about the amendment dollars and whether or not they'll roll over from June 30, 2021. As I have been told, those funds need to be expended in full by June 30, 2021. So what you have in many cases with those resources is 12 months worth of dollars that you're going to spend in 7 or so months, and still trying to achieve prudent use of those dollars, not just spending them on crazy things to get them spent. I don't mean crazy things, but I think we want to produce outcomes with these dollars as much as possible. And we're not giving you much time to do that with. But as I understand it, there is not going to be any extension or rollover of any of the leftover money. So as you're thinking and planning for this, putting into place some ways to potentially put resources in the place that may be greater than what you've normally done in terms of like supports to networks, supports to preschool promise programs. There could be other incentives, other materials and things that you might put into the mix. But that's something that each of you as grantees can schedule some time with me and Margie when she's back to just sort of think through the possibilities. But if there's any indication we can get rollover, I will pursue it. But I was told a pretty hard no when I reached out in a few different ways to figure out if that would happen. So the good news I would assume is that then, come June 30, you get a new 12-month allotment that you'll get to spend in a normal 12-month period instead of in less time. That would, mirror the amount that we're wanting you to have to sustain. But at this point, no rollovers. Christine, I think you had a question.
I was just going to reiterate, kind of speaking for what Shannon was asking, that I was agreeing with her in the chat box. I think the idea of a CCRR playbook for Preschool Promise is actually genius and would be really helpful. And I don't think it's the same as the provider one. I think that would be more about if we could understand our scope of work, I'll speak for myself on this, a little better, I could start setting those systems up even before the amendment comes, even if it's just thinking things through on how I'm going to do certain things, because that time frame is really, really short to even post a position and get people in. But if I already have their onboarding kind of planned out and ready, and if WU can play any role in that, I think, or TRI, sorry, would be really helpful.
So let me just clarify, the playbook is for you guys. That is part of this playbook. And so it's going to take the requirements and break it down in the questions, but it's also going to talk a little bit about our general expectations while also understanding that you know your providers best, you know your communities best, and you know your organizations best. So there may be some specific processes that you guys use in your TA that already are established in work that we don't want to change. We don't want to muck up. So I think that that is going to be part of this playbook. And there's going to be space in there for you guys to say, this is our strength. This is what works best for us.
Okay, thank you, Andy, for that clarification. I didn't think
no problem.
I thought that was just all for providers.
It's mainly for you guys. We will share a copy with the providers because we don't think it's ever fair to have materials that explains a program and not share it with those who are instrumental in implementing the program. So there may be a section in there that we don't share with them that's more CCR specific, that doesn't need to be with the providers or may cause confusion with providers. But yeah, so there's going to be that shared version, but there's also going to be definitely a section there. And I gotta tell you, it's not going to be a checklist. It's not going to be complete directions. We're in line with the deliverables, and really it's about how can you best offer TA and how can you best offer coaching to Preschool Promise providers, knowing that it's going to look different in every community.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for saying that out loud because I was confused too. So that's good clarity for us all.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute there. Toby, go ahead.
When is the work group for the amended work plan going to happen to include the Preschool Promise?
The work group related to the work plan? As soon as I take over the reins from Margie and get that scheduled. As you might imagine, I have competing priorities also. Just a couple, but working on it. So is there a question behind the question, Toby? Just curious.
No, just wondering when it's going to be, just with all the stuff happening, because we have our reports are due, the new work plan's due in December. And literally, I think yesterday was March is how I feel, with the year flying by so fast. So with everything happening just within my organization on that transition too, I'm just trying to make sure because I'm part of that plan, that I make sure I make time for it too. It's just a general question.
No, I appreciate that. Toby, I know you're on. Who are the other two? Was there two more that were noted that were brought forward as participating? Okay, Christine, and I can probably find it somewhere, but it's just faster if I hear it from you guys. Was it Karen Prow by any chance? Okay. I'll write her down. I'll look it up, but I will at least.
I think it was.
You think it was? Okay. I will at least get this thing on the books so we can start moving it forward, because that, like you said, the clock's ticking and we don't have enough time to do it as it is. So, and then we need you to be able to fill it out in the end. So I appreciate the prompt. So here we are at 11:53. Was there any last question? I don't mean last questions. There's plenty of questions that could still be asked about Preschool Promise, but are there any related to anything that was dangling out here that somebody wanted or needed an answer to before we move forward? I appreciate the, yes, Andy?
Well, I just wanted before we break to provide everybody with an update, a very quick update around Lead Learn Excel. So that doesn't need to be now, but I wanted to throw that out there. Sorry, John, I wasn't able to connect with you earlier.
Are you wanting to throw something out now? Is that
before you dismissed us all to enjoy the rest of our day?
Let me
before class is dismissed.
Yeah, let me do a quick check-in here.
Yeah.
Sydney, TA log guide.
Yeah, I was going to give that, I think the same update, Andy, and I was thinking that I could just combine that and the TA log update and just email you, because it seems like we're not going to have time. And they were very brief updates anyway. So I'll just send out an email sometime in the next day or two and let you know. Basically just some, the Ounce is rebranding, so you'll hear them call themselves different things. So we'll make sure you know what that is. So if you get random emails, and there is some more guidance about the TA log coming out, and so I just wanted to give you some information about the timeline of that. But I'll send you an email with the details.
All right, thanks for the quick on that. So we can always reserve some time to talk about any questions you guys might have at a future meeting. Leading into the very last agenda item around meeting structure, we at the Early Learning Division have asked TRI for a little bit of support on these meetings, and we have, and wanted to get your feedback on the meeting structure and whether or not we feel like we can appropriately move to a twice a month structure instead of a weekly meeting structure. So what I think, since we're out of time, essentially, we should probably do there is Hannah would be able to send out sort of a survey to just get some feedback from you all around what we were and what TRI was proposing to do in supporting these meetings and putting together agendas and on what days we would meet and how that would be set up. And then we'll take your feedback to decide what we ultimately do. But just wanted you to know that'll be on the way, and it'll be kind of critical because we were contemplating moving to every other week. And so we'll need to know whether that's going to work at this point from your perspective. So Toby, go ahead.
Well, if we do move to twice a month, like Lynette said earlier in the chat box, just doing that update. If there's any updates that we need to know about that Margie used to send out, saying, hey, this is upcoming, put this on your radar, because sometimes I feel there's a lot to process. And then sometimes I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be the same information. But if we had to move to twice a month, those emails saying, hey, this is coming, look for it. Because like even right now, I think I have 55 emails awaiting in just the 2 hours that we've been on the call. So it just gives me an update to know what to look for.
Good.
And prioritize.
Yep. That makes sense. All right. So 3 minutes left. Any last thoughts, questions, needs? I appreciate us diving a little deeper into Preschool Promise and allowing that time to hear how things are going and what your thoughts are. And I know those are not new thoughts, and I know they're not new requests. And as soon as we have further information, we'll bring it forward to you folks. And do not hesitate to reach out as usual. Our team is here. So I think we will end a whopping 2 minutes early because, you know, we like to give back. So thanks, everybody. Have a good Tuesday afternoon and the rest of your week. Take care.
Dad, did you say 2 minutes early?